not sure what to believe on the internet anymore. I feel like I'm inundated with these fantastic stories and things that are happening this year that makes it crazy. And then there's a long list of all this stuff. But one caught my eye recently, and I kind of listened in for a little bit. And it was filled with the, nominally interesting things that have happened. Maybe true, maybe not. But it was entertaining.
Okay.
But one of them in particular was, and I think you've said you've picked up on this too elsewhere, that somebody allegedly was thinking White Claws were energy drinks and banged down a White Claw every morning before work.
So context matters here.
Yeah.
This is a wife who I guess posted on Reddit.
Oh, that you saw it. Oh, wow. You saw it this way. Okay.
And the wife says, am I ignorant here? He claims that that he didn't know. And the comments were rife with responses saying, honey, this is a functional alcoholic, and this is his rationalization that he's brought to the table. Don't buy it. Right. Don't give in.
And I can see that. And I think, and it's very likely that the story I heard came from that. But the context in which I heard it didn't have any of those details. It was just basically, didn't realize it and admitted, the story was he drank one and then went to work.
Every morning, like on the drive to work, right?
Yeah. So he's drinking and driving.
So he's drinking and driving, making it worse.
Well, sure, except this, to my eye, this seems more plausible that he didn't know because one, wouldn't you brush your teeth after you had one? And maybe he's hidden.
If you're tying one on, you mean?
Well, tying one on, if he's a functional alcoholic, he's drinking one White Claw. If he's
starting with one White Claw.
Oh, you think there's more happening?
Oh, yeah. Here's what I think is happening. I think he's getting the morning White Claw in. There's your plausible deniability. Honey, I thought it was an energy drink. Then he gets to his desk, and immediately he gets the
drawer
the big mug / tumbler, which is mostly vodka with maybe some orange juice or lemonade.
Yeah, okay.
And that gets you through till lunch. And then it's got to be 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah.
Right?
And then, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, I painted such a different picture of like just someone at the mercy of marketing, and you got this, White Claw that looks like a
there's one degree worse than that, and that is when an energy drink company starts producing an alcoholic beverage.
Oh.
This has happened with Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew actually made a hard Mountain Dew. And
take a shot of that if you got one.
Apparently, take a shot. But it looked like Mountain Dew. And then if you look at the can, it was like Mountain Dew and vodka.
Yeah.
So I guess you're not the only one that has seen a little confusion among brands.
Well, maybe this is a good PSA for people out there trick-or-treating. Used to have the candy cigarettes, a Lucky Strike. It looked just like that.
I used to chain smoke candy cigarettes. I was a very stressed out kid.
So watch out for your kids. See if anyone's getting some energy drinks that are alcoholic.
And if there's a house giving those away, just let me know.
Let's put the address in the comments.
You are listening to The Soapbox. I'm Paul.
And I'm Eric.
This all started out with a list. What's that all about?
So I've compiled a list over the years of things that just bother me, things that grind my gears. And I shared that list with you.
And I thought, that would make interesting conversation. Sometimes I'm going to want to agree with you, and it's just going to be something we talk about. Other times, though, I'm going to want to steel man the opposite position because I think that's just interesting conversation.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I'm always right, but Paul's just a really good debater.
Hey. All right, we are on today with a special guest, and I always love it when we've got guests, but we're doing it a little different. We don't have you in studio today. But I'm going to introduce you, as your website does, the fearless truth teller, Mary Kutter. How are you today, Mary?
Oh, I'm doing great. I can't complain. I'm excited to be here with y'all. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So welcome to the Soapbox. The premise of this podcast is basically what grinds your gears. And so we'll get into that here in just a minute. I think everybody's got kind of their soapbox thing that that they really are passionate about, or something that really just gets them fired up. But I want to see if maybe we can divine that a little bit from some of your music and some of the stuff that you do. So you are a musician. We'll lead with who you are in case folks don't know. And you're from right here in Kentucky, right?
Yep, I'm from the heart of the bluegrass, so about an hour west of Lexington, in a little town called Springfield is where I grew up. And now I'm a little bit farther south, down in Nashville, but I'm still a Kentucky gal.
And you're talking to 1.5 Canadians, so...
Oh, my gosh. Well, I respect you. I will say that, now what neck of the woods in Canada are we talking?
So I'm originally from Calgary, so Western Canada.
Wow. Okay, I've heard all about... Don't y'all have like a music festival that's up in Calgary, like Boots and Hearts or Hearts and Boots? I'm messing it up.
So,
I haven't been...
I was 7 when I left, so I wasn't hip on all the happenings. The big one is the rodeo up there. They have the Calgary Stampede, but wow. I'm sure they've got some great live music as well, and probably a lot of country fans in Western Canada because it's flat, and so that's cattle country.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you moved south as well, baby. You know, but Canadians, all the Canadians I've met, I haven't met a ton of folks that, you know, were born in Canada, but they all seem to be super nice, at least the ones in Nashville. So we're just excited.
We're obligated to be polite. It's just one of the many tenets of being from the area, for sure.
Yep.
So half my family is Canadian. Now I've also got another half that's Western Kentucky, and so that was the reason why I even paid attention when I was scrolling through on Instagram and saw you had a song that had a callback to Bardstown, Kentucky. And my aunt and uncle lived in Bardstown for like 20 years. So immediately I was like, hold on, this is not the boilerplate national act here. This girl is actually from the area if she's named in Bardstown.
Well, Bardstown was kind of the closest civilization growing up. That's where we would go get our groceries and stuff. But, you know, I love Bardstown, and my family has a lot of history in that neck of the woods. And that's, you know, I do tend to write about, you know, stories from Kentucky, and especially where I grew up. That's really cool. Yeah.
So I was looking through your catalog, and I was browsing on YouTube. So maybe your metrics are going to be different across different platforms. But it seems like right now you've got 2 tracks that are getting a lot of attention. And one of them's Devil's Money. And then in that same vein, The Devil Wore a Lab Coat. So you were telling a story that I think is intimately familiar, unfortunately, to a lot of folks from coal mining towns and different places. But is this something that's touched your life personally? And do you want to maybe give a little backstory on what message you're bringing with these songs and what you're trying to do with that?
Absolutely. So The Devil Wore a Lab Coat, man, that was a song idea that had been sitting on my heart for a long time. You know, I grew up, you know, in the sticks of Kentucky, and I saw with my own eyeballs the opioid crisis. And, you know, it's so heartbreaking about addiction, and specifically with this epidemic. Obviously, it hits the person that, you know, does get addicted, but then a lot of times they have kiddos, that's, you know, them, and then turns into this cycle. And I mean, just to give you all a mindset, where I'm from, there's a little college. I don't know if y'all had ever heard of it or not, but it was called St. Catherine College. And they closed that college and turned it into a rehab center. I mean, there's more of a demand for a rehab center than a college. And I had been thinking a lot about it, you know, just the things that, you know, I've seen, and, you know, folks that I care about that had, you know, fallen, you know, victim to the situation. And, you know, I live in Nashville. I write songs every day, and I would go into writing rooms, and I'd be like, y'all, I think we should write a song about Big Pharma. And they'd be like, what else you got? You know? And then finally I was in the right room, and the song just fell out. We wrote it about 45 minutes, which that's really quick for a writing session. Usually songwriting sessions in Nashville, at least in country music, they're 3 or 4 hours for a typical situation. But anyway, the song just fell out, and I think it's because, you know, we just wrote it from our hearts. And I posted a little tidbit of it online, obviously not knowing, you know, how people are going to respond, but it ended up, you know, being something that I learned, where in my brain, whenever we wrote the song, I was just writing from what, you know, my experiences growing up in Kentucky, you know, what I knew to be the truth in Kentucky. Well, I look in the comment sections, and people are saying, this happened where I'm from in Minnesota, and this happened up in Massachusetts. This happened down in Georgia. And I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. And I mean, obviously heartbreaking. But I don't think I had any idea that, a song that I had written just honestly just to shed light on a situation that, started years ago and we're still, trying to come back from, it would touch so many different folks.
Yeah. Now, you strike me as a storyteller first. And I get that from, I guess, a couple of things. One, you've got writing credits that precede your singing. And so this is something that you've been doing for a long time prior to now your breakout tour here, we'll call it. And we're excited to be the second show on that roster, by the way. Yeah. I definitely will be there.
Oh, I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, continue.
But in addition to just your writing credits, you also had a radio show too, right?
Mm-hmm. And so I have a lot of respect for what y'all do. I mean, there are so many pieces that I don't even know if the audience even realizes, from the first finding the talent that you want to have on the show, then playing Tetris with the show to find the time to record. Mm-hmm. And then there's the editing, the interview, then there's the posting, all the technological stuff. So what had happened with that, I kind of fell into it. In Bardstown, there was a feller who owned a couple of different radio stations and a TV station, and I was singing at different fairs and festivals at this point. This is before I moved to Nashville. And anyway, long story short, he wanted to start a music variety show, and we had met backstage at something I was singing at, and we ran into each other at another event that he would be covering, and I would just be singing at. And so he called me up, asked me to come into his office. He said he wanted to talk to me about something. And I didn't know what it was about. I thought maybe the radio station was going to host a show or something, they were going to ask me to sing at. Well, I walk into his office, I sit down, and he tells me, well, I want to start a live music variety show, and I want someone from Kentucky to host it. I want you to do it. And I was so caught off guard because, y'all obviously with your, earphones on with the microphones, y'all have a lot of experience with, what you do. I didn't have any experience in that realm, but I remember I talked to my dad, and he was like, Mary, this could be such a big opportunity for you. You need to say yes, and I'm so glad that I did, because that was really the catalyst for Nashville happening. I would have different folks on the radio tours and all that, were coming on the show, and I'd interview them. They'd play some songs. I'd sing a little bit in the show as well. And I ended up having a couple people on the show that I started writing with. And anyway, just like anything else in the world, but especially in Nashville, you write with Billy. Billy's like, oh man, you got to write with Becky. Then you write with Becky. Then she's like, oh, have you written with Tom yet? Then you write with Tom. And it just keeps on going. And before I knew it, I was down here in Nashville, and I didn't have any money. I didn't have, any big connections or anything like that. I didn't really know what to do, to be totally real, to make my dreams come true. But it's kind of like, and I didn't know this whenever I first moved to town. I read Dolly's autobiography, which is somewhere behind me on this bookshelf. And I did not realize whenever she moved to town, she was writing for other people as well. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I found myself in different writing rooms with different artists that were taking off. And I got pulled into the rooms to help tell their story. And it really has been a little spaghetti noodle, the timeline of all the things music. But if I had not said yes to that radio show, I don't know if I really don't even know if I'd be in Nashville. I actually don't know. And, then you go back a step further. Thank goodness I'd been booked to play whatever that first show was where, the station feller had been at. It's just crazy.
Yeah. Now, I've seen in another interview, somebody asked you the question, like, what was the typical pathway? And you said there is no typical pathway.
Right.
But it does seem like maybe the core competency is more about networking and just relationship building as well as the storytelling component.
It's such a small town for sure. And, this is the thing. Someone told me, you hear all kinds of numbers, but supposedly right now there's 10,000 songwriters in Nashville that are really trying to get a deal right now. Now, I've heard that number is even higher, but it's hard for me to imagine it being any bigger than that. But just to give you a mindset, there's about 300 songwriters that actually have publishing deals. So they actually get paid. Okay. And I'm blessed to be one of those. I finally got a deal. I was working hard. And Anyway, that being said, I think because the supply and demand seesaw is so crazy in Nashville. I think that's why, that's what I tell myself anyway. I think that's why that networking and all that stuff, who you know, is so important. It's just that there's so many people, you know what I'm saying? You want to make sure who you're talking to is on the up and up and all that, you know, but you got to have them good. You know, you might get an introduction to walk in the room, but my goodness, if you do not deliver, you probably won't get asked back, you know?
I've been on a, you know, like a Wednesday or Thursday night, just, you know, downtown on the Strip, hearing people who are phenomenally talented struggle just to, you know, pass the 5-gallon bucket around and just get a few folks interested because
And
there's
then-
so much competition.
Then they're going to go play at another club, you know, an hour later
Yeah.
and an hour later, and they just keep going. That is amazing.
Oh, it's crazy. Down on Broadway. Oh my gosh. What a lot of the musicians do, and I think it might be different for the singers, I don't know, but the straight up musicians, they'll do 4-hour shifts, and a lot of times they do doubles. So they'll play, just think about it, 8 hours straight of playing. Like that. Can you imagine your fingers? Oh my goodness, you know? And I saw someone post yesterday, a friend of mine, he was going to do a double. So he had 8 hours, but then someone called him last minute and said, can you do one more? So he played 12 hours. 12 hours. That's just so crazy to think about. But, you know, it's just like, you know, if you love to play basketball, you know, you can play for hours. You know, it obviously there's different pieces to it, but there is a lot of talent. I remember when I first moved to Nashville, to make bread and butter, I was hosting different writers' nights in Nashville. So when a lot of folks think of Nashville, they think of Broadway, you know, down the Strip where, you know, it's super fun to be down at. And that's where they're doing a lot of cover gigs. Well, close to Music Row, right in the middle of the city in Midtown, as they call it, there is a whole scene within itself as all the local musicians. And pre-pandemic, that was the poppin' spot. If you were trying to make it in the music business, unless you had a gig on Broadway, you would have your hinetail onto Montbrand. That's the street where most of it was at. And you would just bounce between the bars and there would be different shows. Well, I used to host a couple of those shows. And I remember, just to give you a mindset of the talent in Nashville, the last show I was running, and I ran that right up until the COVID, you know, shutdown and all that. I ran that one for 10 months. And in the span of 10 months, I didn't like to do a lot of repeats. You know, I'd have different people perform every week. We'd have 12 guests, and we had just under 500 different people play in 10 months. Wow. And literally on one hand, I could count people that shouldn't have been up there. I mean, everyone was great. Like, they were great. And I remember one night, I was standing in the back of the bar, you know, some folks were up there playing, and I looked around, and this is right after I moved to town. I looked around, and I thought, oh my gosh, every single person in this room is beautiful. All these people singing are singing great songs. I felt like I was on a movie set. And it was just such a weird, oh wow, you know, talk about going from the little puddle to the pond to maybe the ocean or whatever. You know, it was really a crash course in songwriting and a PhD and just seeing the music business, running those shows at night, being like, okay, that's where everyone's at. That's the bar. How are we going to cut through even that, you know?
Yeah. And I can imagine that imposter syndrome kicks in a little bit when you're in that environment, especially coming from Springfield, going to Nashville and realizing that this is the standard. This is the standard. And I've got to either meet or exceed that just to be here, let alone to stand out in that crowd. How do you do that? And I do want to circle back to something you said about the COVID shutdown, because I got the impression that you were able to leverage some of what you do online during COVID. How did that help you? How did things shutting down help your musical career?
Man, I'll tell you what, COVID, man, it's so wild because I moved to Nashville it was pre-pandemic. Whenever I moved, the world shuts down. I remember I called my dad. I knew it was real. Like the shutdown was happening. I didn't pay attention at all until the basketball tournament got canceled. And I was like, oh, something's going on in the world. Like, honestly, that was my Mary Kutter's, something's going on. Well, I remember I called up my dad and I was like, Dad, they're shutting down all the shows on the Montbrand. Of course, y'all remember that was my last line at that point. I said, rides aren't going to be happening in person. All the meetings are stopping. Everyone's just going on hiatus. I don't know what to do. And he told me, he was like, hey, my dad mainly works in automotive companies. And of course that got shut down. He said, Mary, during this time, I've got to figure out The only things that aren't going to be shut down is like food manufacturing and medical stuff. He's like, I don't know anything about medical, so I might go into food stuff. So that's where he was going to focus. He said, you got to think about what can you do when everything else, what do you actually control? And I thought, whoa, that's a really good point. And so when I literally started the Monday after when the basketball tournament was supposed to be, was when I first started doing the Zoom writing. And because at this point, I wasn't really releasing music or anything as an artist yet. But I started writing 2-3 times a day, period, the end, 7 days a week. 7 days, not 5 days. Because I thought, hey, you don't have any excuse. Before then I was writing all day, then going out all night. That was my schedule. So it was still felt like a slower situation. But it was during that era, during the COVID lockdown, that I wrote so many songs, y'all. Like, I know one year it was 497 songs. One year it was 452.
Okay. So
and just to give y'all a mindset, go ahead, baby.
I was just going to say that answers a question I had a little bit later, which is January 2023, you released 180. May 2024, Devil's Money. November 2024, Bootlegger's Bible. So you're just sitting on a big back catalog then, right? You've got tons and tons of things to choose from.
Well, let me tell you, you would think so. Now, those songs, those big numbers, that was prior to me writing for myself as an artist. I was writing for other artists.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and that's kind of the plot twist. So, rewind back to COVID era, and this will all circle around, I promise. COVID era happens, world shuts down. I start writing my hind tail off. I started writing some songs that started to kind of move the dial a little bit here in Nashville. Before that, honestly, I had a whole lot of nothing with the side, nothing going on, if we're being honest. Well, so during the lockdown, I'm writing some songs. The world opens back up. Some of these songs start dropping. And that's just with folks, I don't know if y'all know Nate Smith, Bailey Zimmerman, some folks that started getting record deals, after the world opened back up. I had some songs with them. And anyway, at this point in my brain, whenever I moved to Nashville, I was told two things by multiple people, but one really respected business person in town, where they said it's so hard for a woman to make it in country music. And they said, if you want to even have a shot, you've got to break as a writer first. That was right after I moved to town. Now, was that true? I don't know. Like, honestly, it don't really matter, honestly, if it was or not, because I decided it was in my brain, and I thought, well, I've got to break as a writer. Then I'll flip to, do artistry, because, like I said, I didn't know what to do to break as an artist anyway. Well, so all this time, I'm just writing for other folks, and I'm just helping tell their stories, And on the very end of 2023, it was like end of October 23. I had started early that fall, getting up at 5 a.m. every morning and running 5 miles a day. I still do that every day. And in that window of time before my writing session at 11 a.m., I started solo writing, for my artistry. Now, at this point, there was nothing going on with my artistry. Well, I started working on some different song ideas, and Devil's Money was one of them. And I brought that into two good buddies of mine, and we wrote the song. Okay. Fast forward to Christmas break. So now it was December 30th or 31st. I think it was December 30th of 23. I was back home visiting family, and I went out to the church that, my great granddaddy had helped build, and I filmed a clip of the song. And to be real with y'all, I didn't have any numbers at all. I remember at that point, there was like 30,000 followers on Instagram. I don't know what TikTok was. I really didn't know what I needed to do next. I had some really close calls, songs I've written for other artists going to radio, some other really big household names recording songs, and deciding how to put them out. Like, it had been really kind of a tough year in 23, where multiple times I thought, oh, my life is about to change for the better, then things would fall through. Well, so I'm up in Kentucky. I just had Christmas with the family. I filmed this video. I posted it, and that was the first viral situation. I woke up the next morning with a couple million views on the song, and it was that song that kind of kicked open the door for my artistry. And I remember I called up my friends that are co-writers, and I was like, y'all, did you see With Devil's Money? And they're like, oh my gosh, because they're writers on them. And I was like, I don't have any other songs for myself to sing. And so what we started doing, as soon as I got back to Nashville, at nights and on weekends, I was writing for my artistry. And then during the day, I was still writing for other artists. And I did that until the end of last summer. And at that point, it was just starting to make more sense just to flip the switch over to artistry land. And it really is wild. But, with that catalog, there's still a lot of songs that I really do believe in that haven't been cut yet. Obviously, out of those big numbers from, 22, 21, 2020, they're just kind of sitting there. And I feel like one day they'll see the light of the day. Some of them have. Where some of those songs are just the songs that, it's like going to the gym. You know what I mean? You got to, run the first mile to get to mile 2, the mile 3, then 4 or 5, So anyway, but here we are.
We've got some podcast episodes that might never see the light of day too. I should ask, the video that went viral, was it a full song or was it a clip of part of the song?
Just a clip. Just a clip. It was just a verse and a chorus. And I had this thought, and this is what I started doing all of last year then. Like literally there was maybe a dozen days I didn't post last year. Maybe. And it was usually because something had happened on the national news that day that I knew I didn't need to be posting, or something was going real viral. I thought I shouldn't think, Yeah. Well, what I started doing was, so I get back to Nashville, hightailing it over, we're writing songs, and I would just post like a verse chorus of whatever we had written in the room that day, just demos, just songwriting demos. And I know there's differing opinions on if that's a good thing to do or not, obviously, but that's really what took, whatever the numbers are now. I think we're at 437,000 followers on Instagram now. And I haven't run any ads. So it's purely from posting songs every day, since last year. So it's really cool how the little thing in our hands, the phone, sometimes there's a lot of not great things that go with that, obviously, in the social media. But I'll tell you what, I am very grateful for the tool.
Absolutely. I teach an information communication technology class here at the university, and I'm probably going to clip you saying that and put it into my course, because one of the things we talk about is the fact that everybody has a platform now, and it's just a matter of whether or not you utilize that platform. And another concept that you're sort of alluding to, and I'll just say it out loud so I can also use this part in the lecture, but that perseverance or that resilience that you've got, demonstrating, hey, you know what, I'm going to keep hacking away at this thing. The name that pops to mind for me is actually another musician who kind of got fame around the same time that you were going viral, and you maybe you guys will do a collaboration. That'd be super cool. But Oliver Anthony.
Yep.
And I get a lot of the same vibe, and that is just a grassroots movement around a storyteller. And I think that's what people crave. So, yeah. Thanks.
Well, you know what? I haven't met Oliver yet, but we have a bunch of mutual friends. So, and I think, what's so cool about his music, and I hope that, my music can do the same thing, there's a million ways to slice an onion, but it really does say something when it's just, the song speaks for itself. He posts his clips and people resonate with it. And that's why he is where he's at.
Yeah. Well, and I think your methodology, it seems to be working, even though maybe it's not convention. You had mentioned on another podcast that, you showed up with all these brand new songs, and people would sing the verse and the chorus, and then they'd kind of, drop out because they didn't know that next part. But then they drop back in as soon as you get back to that chorus again. And that's crazy? Fascinating. That now instead of we went from whole albums to singles, and now we've gone from singles to reels.
Right.
That's true. That's a really good point. And, it was so wild the first time that it happened. Literally, I was using these things called in-ears that I never used before in a show. This was back in May. I was up in Northern Ohio. And what it is, it's essentially like speakers that are in your ears. It's just like headphones, but you don't, really see them. They go in your ears. Well, anyway, hence in ears. But anyway, so I had those in, and it has the bands all plugged in there, and they have a metronome and all that. Well, I'm singing these songs, and I'm thinking, oh no, there's feedback. What's going on? I'm hearing everything I'm singing. And then I realized song 2 or 3 that it's not, well, I was singing, but that's not what I was hearing. I was hearing the audience. And it was awesome. such a cool feeling, and a good relief that it wasn't technology doing bad stuff on the first time using it. So,
yes. Well, and what a compliment that people know your words, right? And they're singing them back to you. I think that's got to be a big
very
moment.
Cool. Oh, it's huge. And I'm so excited because literally in less than a month now, just several weeks, we're going to be going on the first headlining tour that I'm doing. and I'm just pumped to meet people. Because this is the thing. Online, it's so cool. You see that I read all the comments. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. I read all the comments, and whatever the view numbers, wherever it's at, whether it's just a typical video or it's a viral video, I get excited with all of it. But it's going to be really cool seeing the eyeballs down the audience, actually hugging people, talking to the folks that we're friends online. But it's going to be really cool.
And they're there to see you too, versus you opening for someone, and
That's a really good point, Sugar. It is a different thing. This year, I tell you what, it has been such a whirlwind in the best way. Music has taken me places that I wouldn't have been able to go otherwise. I went to Germany back in March, literally got the call the day before. It was the afternoon, actually, before the morning I would need to leave. Long story short, one of the artists I was playing at this big festival over there had gotten sick. And they called me up and asked if I had a passport, if I could be on the plane the next day. And I was like, wow. Yes and yes. And it was crazy. Well, anyway, I say all that. Music took me there, but it also let me open up for a couple of people this year so far. I've opened up for Hank Jr. a couple of times, played my first arena, I guess about a month ago, which was awesome. But, you're not wrong, where it is a different energy, where whenever we were out at the arena, I was playing out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which I'd never been to Oklahoma before. But after the show, I went and did a little meet and greet time. And there was a bunch of people that came up to the meet and greet. And I say a bunch, it was literally 2 hours that we did a meet and greet line, which was awesome. But anyway, I can't even tell you how many folks were coming up saying, hey, I never heard your music before tonight. Now that's cool, but it's going to be really cool when it's, Sally Joe, who's been following along for the last year and a half. It just, both are cool. It's just a different thing.
That's cool. And Hank Jr. was Sturgis, right? You did the Pike Rally there?
I did that first, and which was crazy. Biggest show I had ever played at. But then not him personally, his team called my team and was like, hey, we want her to open up for us again. And that was the Tulsa show. And that was the first arena then. So it was crazy. So Hank Jr., I feel like that's one of those people. Talk about an icon.
This is big, right? You've got Hank Jr., you've got arena show, now you're headlining a tour. I feel like we are catching you at the very front end of something huge, and then we're going to just ride it.
Oh, she made it on the SoapBox Lex podcast.
Now she's made it on the SoapBox Lex podcast. Yeah, you made it.
That's right, Sugar. Yes, you took the words out of my mouth. Hey, I feel like a lucky son of a gun to be on your all show. It really sounds like y'all are, have built and are building something just huge. It's just really cool.
Well, we appreciate it for sure. I would be remiss not to ask you the show's format question, or unless you want to do the honors. Since I've been doing a lot of the talking.
No, it's the what grinds your gears in the music business or anything.
And it can be completely unrelated if you want to dodge a bullet and not throw anybody under the bus.
Yeah,
you're
welcome to though. Either however you want to approach the question.
Man, what grinds your gears? I think this is the thing that. I had an epiphany a little while back how short life is. Even if you live to be 100 years old, it's awful quick. Yeah. It's really, really, really quick. And I had this thought to piggyback off of this. This is a very heavy thought. I apologize ahead of time, but I'm just saying what's been in my brain. 100 years from now, I'll be gone, you'll be gone, we'll all be gone. And it kind of changes the way you view things a little bit. So if you really want to go after something, go for it. I heard this quote probably about a year and a half ago. Robin Roberts, who she's just so dope, she had said that she treats every day like a sponge, where she just wants to wring out every bit of life out of it. And I was like, oh, that's so incredible. And I started seeing when I started trying to live like that, it made me want to get up earlier. Maybe want to, do the read just to learn as much as I can. Maybe want to try to be the best I could be, physically and then mentally, and just go for stuff. What's the worst that could happen? Mm-hmm. I mean, really, the worst thing, I thought about this before I moved to Nashville. I thought to myself, you know what? The worst thing that could happen, realistically, is me going down here and not having any success. Okay.
Yeah, which was the inevitable outcome of not trying. So what have you got to lose?
Correct. And so there is something really exciting about just cannonballing in every single day. Now you got to check out for shallow water, but it is exciting.
Yeah. Now does this mindset correlate with something else? Because I read a little bit about your crazy work ethic / morning routine. You already told us here you're getting up at 5 to go running. you also diary or journal a stream of consciousness, 3 pages every morning. Yep. Is that right?
Every morning, baby. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Is this all coming from that same carpe diem mindset?
I would say so. Yeah, I'd say they go hand in hand for sure. And, the morning routine, it's my favorite part of the day. It's so wonderful. I mean, I get up at 5, I sit down, I have my notebook, and I do 3 pages of just stream of conscious. I purposely write illegibly so I cannot reread it later, or anyone else can either. And then I read a little bit, I solo write. I've just started meditating, which that's a whole thing, but I do it for like 5 minutes. So I don't know if I would say I'm a legit meditator. It's literally one of the little apps that tell you to think about what you're grateful for and that kind of thing. Anyway, but then I go run. And this year has been really cool, y'all. My New Year's resolution at the top of this year was to obviously keep on doing what I'm doing, but I was thinking, how cool would it be? Because every day, I'm running for like 45 minutes to hit the 5 miles. That's about an album, give or take. So I've been listening to a different album every single day. And the way I figure it, that's a lot of music by the end of this year, and I've learned so much since just listening. This past week, I was studying more of I've done different batches, I did a bunch of female country acts from current, then I did a bunch of rock country, then I did rock, but right now I'm doing classic rock females, if that's what you would say. I guess Janis Joplin,
okay.
Did who else did I do last week? And I listened to an album, a day, with them. I listened to Blondie over the weekend, so that was kind of cool. But anyway, it's been really cool. It's been really, really neat. But there's the thing. Life is too short not to listen to a bunch of music. You know what I mean? It's too short for us not to try to feel good, Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to run 5 miles. Just for my brain, that's what works good for my brain. Probably some people taking a walk. Some people might just, it might actually be sleeping a little bit longer and then having be a night owl and really do your stuff then. I think everyone's wired different, but it's been such a blessing finding out my rhythm, how I flow the best.
That's awesome. And trivia about this guy here, because he won't bring it up, but I will. Humble brag for my friend here. He actually played with a female-led 90s inspired rock group. Mm-hmm. So it was all Gwen Stefani and that kind of that era.
Morissette. Yeah, and it was very purposeful. Because you go down to Nashville, I guarantee you go into some of these clubs, you're going to hear 90s rock, and they're going to be playing Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Stone Temple Pilots. Great bands, love them. But you never hear the female-led bands.
And the lead singer, actually, we've had her on the podcast. Mm-hmm. One of her points, one of her soapboxes is if you go hear a rock band, they don't say this is an all-male rock band, right? But if you've got a girl singer, now they feel the need to differentiate. And I'll ask your experience here, being a part of the music industry. Do you feel that sense of tokenism occurring just because you're a female act? Is this something that still happens?
There definitely is that. There definitely is that for sure. And first off, that's really cool, Sugar. That's so cool. Man, look at you. I don't know how you have enough hours in the day to make that happen.
But we're doing really covers. Neat. It's not writing our own music. So touche, or that's off to you. So
honestly though, it's just and I will get off my soapbox for a second, but covers, you think about back in the 50s and 60s, the same hit song, multiple people would record it because it's a phenomenal song. I think sometimes we even romanticize. There's other, and I say this as someone that writes all the time, but when a song's a great song, why not have different styles of doing it? Why not have different performers? You know what I'm saying? But that is my personal opinion. Y'all did not ask for. But to answer your question about the tokenism, I definitely saw it quite a bit more when I was writing for other artists. There was a handful of times where I was pulled into a room with, a male artist, and he'd be like, "I've never written with a girl before." And of course, that's okay. That's okay. I was like, well, I hope this is a good first time writing with a girl, but there definitely have, even still, the thoughts of, even just the mentality of such and such label, they already have a girl.
Oh.
So do you want to be that label? And it's just well, how many boys do they have? Yeah. Oh, they have 6. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think though what happened was, for better or for worse, in the 2010s, and from my studying this year is when I actually had this thought process about this time frame. Really, I guess it really started a couple of years before that, but really in the 2010s, there was just a lack of females that were actually being successful. Now, there were like, obviously, Kelsey Ballerini cut through, Mara Morris cut through, but for the amount they were pushing out, the amount that were working, it was no bueno, you know, in Nashville. And prior to that, I mean, the early 2000s, there were a ton of females. I mean, from, you know, obviously Taylor Swift, Carrie Underwood, Miranda, Gretchen, Trisha Yearwood, Faith Hill, Martina, Reba. I mean, it goes on, you know, and those were the Shania top shelf people. That's not even kind of, you know.
Can I interrupt for a moment?
Please.
You mentioned a name I wrote down here. I was listening to Go South and Dosey Don't. Were you channeling a little Carrie Underwood with that? Because I can hear some angry woman doing karaoke. 2 Sheets to the Wind, singing either one of those songs. I'm like, that would work for me.
I love that. Biggest compliment ever, Sugar. You know, I definitely was feeling a little bit sassafras whenever I wrote those songs. So, you know, that means a lot to me. And, you know, Carrie, that's a good example. Man, she's a great example of someone who's just recorded phenomenal songs. And I think that's really where my brain goes, yes, there are definitely going to be some people that, you know, and I'll use the word, there are people that are sexist. There are people that are racist or whatever. You know, there is that in the world, but I think for the most part, at least with the sexism thing in country music, sure, there's been that's happened, but I would actually argue, and this is after me studying a lot of albums this year, from acts that have label deals that probably you've never heard of, I wouldn't have heard of if I hadn't researched the list of the rosters of, you know, folks that were signed that weren't breaking. Sometimes their songs weren't there, you know, but then you look at someone like Carrie Underwood, yeah, she had Idol, but there were a lot of people that had Idol that didn't break through. You know, she cut really, really good songs. And, you know, even that 2010s list, you know, the Kelsey Ballerinis and the Mara Morses, their first records had a bunch of like just actual hit songs on there, you know? So anyway, I say that, you know, even with this, you know, earlier we were yakking about, you know, if there's ever any differences in how you're treated because you're a female, sure, I'm sure there is, you know, but I do think that you write music that resonates with people. It don't matter if it's a boy or a girl singing it, you know what I'm saying? And now I do think that probably, you know, a lot of my artist songs, not all of them, but like Labcoat and Devil's Money, both of those songs I think could have been recorded by a feller easily. You know, they're not really like girly songs by a long shot, but and that might just be my personality, or it might be because the last couple of years, you know, I was just writing songs mainly for guys because there weren't a lot of females. I mean, I was getting songs with some females, but there weren't a lot of them that had deals, you know? So probably it trained my brain a little bit whenever I was writing songs. I don't know. I'm not saying they're not feminine, but they probably do lean more into that bucket over here.
Yeah. I've got one last question for you here, and then we're getting close to time, but there's a line from Devil's Money that has now become its own thing. I think you know what I'm talking about now already, but for those that don't know, Righteous Redneck Robin Hood, which is just a delightful collection of words anyway. It comes off the tongue so well, but it's a fun image, and it's become something philanthropic. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about that?
For sure I do, Sugar. So something I've always been, I guess it's really what was the intriguing part about my great-granddaddy's life in my noggin. You know, growing up, you know, I heard the story. We'd be driving back, you know, from the city. Mom would point down the street where, you know, the church was at, you know, down a back road. And she's like, down that road is where your great-granddaddy built a church, you know, the bootlegger. You know, growing up, I always heard that story. Well, you know, into my brain, I was always like, that's so weird. Like, bootlegging was illegal, but he built a church. And like, as I grew up, you know, I was told more stories about him. He had a very complex life, you know, from the realms of, you know, he was, you know, an orphan, built his own, you know, empire, you know, from bootlegging. And then of course he helped build a church with some of that moolah. He had a run-in with Al Capone, which obviously you're probably not a choir boy if that's happening, just saying. But then he lost his son in a really tragic accident, and then he lost his entire fortune whenever the stock market crashed. Well, his life was just so many chapters, you know. But what always stuck out to me was the idea that someone that it wasn't like, you know, he was Gandhi. by a long shot. You know what I'm saying? But he did a lot of good with what he had. And, whenever we put that line in the song, I don't think it even registered into my noggin at that point in time. Because y'all remember at that point, I didn't have any artistry stuff going. I was just writing this song that was about my family. But when things started kicking off, something I've always really respected, and I'm sure y'all do too, I don't think I'm alone in this, is how Dolly Parton from the get-go, she started that imagination library. When there's a tragedy, you better believe she always sends a check of something to help people. And she is just, from the very beginning, that woman has just given back, given back, given back. It starts with a song, but then she gives back to others. And I mean, I'm not Dolly Parton, but I can, at different places where I stop. So with different, cities that we play at, we're going to be stopping at different, schools, different, clinics, prisons, whatever, is the right fit for where we're at. Obviously Lexington might be different than Decatur, Georgia, but basically I hope that I can follow my granddaddy's, bootsteps a little bit, and give them back.
Yeah. I noticed that kind of that weird juxtaposition in your music, because you have at times a critique of the less savory elements in life, and then at times an embrace. I'm thinking "Smell the Smoke," and the fact that, hey, Kentucky's known for something, but here's something we're not known for unless you're from here. And then
that's true.
Bad Apple underscores that for me a lot. It seems to express a lot of what folks feel about the unattainable standard of growing up in the South and maybe having Christian roots and expectations and nobody living up to them.
Yes. Man, you got a good noggin on your shoulders. Literally just the way you describe Bad Apple, like, yes, that is what that song is about. Boy teaches college. That's what all I can say, 100%. And that is something too. That's one of the beautiful things, I guess, about life is the different layers, I don't know about y'all, but I really do love movies. And maybe that's not a popular thing to say, but I love watching TV. I know that sounds horrible, but I love good movies with a good story. Well, you think about the movie The Godfather, for example. There are so many layers to that story where, on the surface, it's like these people are bad people, or that's a really cool story. Well, those are cool guys. But then you look at the layer underneath, there's loyalty with their family and they worked hard and all this, but remember the horse scene? You know what I'm saying? There's all kinds of different situations. Yep. But I think that is kind of cool to write about in music,
That's awesome. Well, we're up on the clock here. You're going to be live in Lexington November 5th at the Burl. And I guess everybody needs to go ahead and come on out and support some good live music right here in Kentucky. Kentucky made, Kentucky born.
Yeah. Is there an opening act too, or just you?
Nope. We're going to be coming in strong, baby doll. Now, I will say that I'd gotten the ticket counts the other day, and I know the tickets are moving. So if someone is planning on coming, feel free to go ahead and grab tickets. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of walk-in situations or not, but everything's on my website, or you can, go to the Burl, and get tickets there online. But my website's marykutter.com.
We'll put links to all that in the description box and all that, of course.
Awesome. Well, Mary, thank you so much for being on the Soapbox with us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it's been great, y'all. I appreciate y'all so much, and thank you for having me, and thank you for the Tetris Timeland. Appreciate y'all. I can't wait.
Love it. Yeah.
All right,
y'all. Well, we'll talk soon.
We've got a brand new website. What is that site?
That is SoapBoxLex.com.
So you can check us out on the web. You can also check us out on your favorite streaming platforms, including...
we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, and we're on Amazon. And of course...
if you want to check us out and actually see what you're listening to, we do have video as well on YouTube. And I don't know if you knew this, but Spotify does video too.